The news day continues here on One News Now. Diego Castro bringing you the biggest headline from around the world. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres pledges not to give up on pushing for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Guterres urged UN members to avert a humanitarian catastrophe as he reiterated his appeal for a humanitarian ceasefire. The General Assembly is likely to vote on a draft resolution by Tuesday. This comes after the United States vetoed a draft resolution in the Security Council that demanded for an immediate ceasefire.
The situation is fast deteriorating into a catastrophe with potentially irreversible implications for Palestinians as a whole and for peace and security in the region. And I reiterated my appeal for a humanitarian ceasefire to be declared. Regrettably, the Security Council failed to do it, but that does not make it less necessary. So, I can promise I will not give up.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he appreciates Washington's move to block the ceasefire demand. The U.S. called the resolution imbalanced, stressing that it failed to acknowledge Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas.
אני מאוד מעריך את העמדה הנכונה שארצות הברית נקטה במועצת הביטחון של האו"ם. גם מדינות אחרות צריכות להבין שאי אפשר מצד אחד לתמוך בחיסול של החמאס, ומצד שני לקרוא להפסקת המלחמה שתמנע את חיסול החמאס. ולכן ישראל תמשיך במלחמה הצודקת שלנו לחיסול החמאס.
Israeli tanks battled their way to the heart of Khan Younis in a major new push into the main city of the southern Gaza Strip. Residents said tanks had reached the main north-south road through the middle of Khan Younis after intense combat through the night that had slowed the Israeli advance from the east. Warplanes were pounding the area west of the assault. Israel launched the storm of Khan Younis this week after a truce collapse, extending its ground war to Gaza's southern half in an expanded phase of its 2-month-old campaign to wipe out Hamas militants. International aid organizations say this has left the enclave's 2.33 million people with nowhere to hide. Meanwhile, violence escalates at Lebanon's border with Israel as Hezbollah launched explosive drones and missiles at Israeli positions. The Israeli army reports that suspicious aerial targets had crossed from Lebanon, 2 of which were intercepted. 2 Israeli soldiers were moderately wounded in the attack. Israeli airstrikes also rocked several towns and villages in South Lebanon. A local official says an Israeli airstrike on the town of Aitarun destroyed 5 homes and damaged many more. A Hezbollah official says the Israeli airstrikes were a new escalation to which the group was responding with new types of attacks. Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah have been trading fire since the war in Gaza erupted. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now World. I'm Diego Castro. New Argentine President Javier Milei says the road to rebuilding the country has begun. After being sworn into office on Sunday, Milei says his predecessors left the country without funds and on a path to hyperinflation. Milei blames previous governments for leaving the country in ruins. Upon his election, Milei is left to deal with a triple-digit inflation, tumbling foreign currency reserves, and rising poverty. Friends and family mourn the loss of their loved ones after tornadoes hit southern U.S. over the weekend. More details in this report by the Associated Press.
Lamentablemente pasó un tragedia aquí, como es un tornado, pasó, como ve aquí que viví en esta tráiler, se volcó el otro tráiler encima y mi finada hermana se quedó debajo del otro tráiler, se fue encima. Lamentablemente se le quitó la vida de mi finada hermana y un sobrino de 2 años también.
And we all hunkered down in the floor right there. And then the next thing we know, it just sounded like an explosion went off. You could hear stuff flying everywhere. It was crazy. And that's another reason I didn't sleep last night too. So it's not. I'm thankful that we're all alive, but what hurts me more than anything is he lost his life last night. All this material stuff can be replaced, but my friend can't.
We had to gather up all the pets and hide in the bathroom. Yeah, the house was shaking, tree fell on the house. Very loud, very scary.
Yeah, it literally felt like the whole house was shaking, like the foundation, and we could hear all the trees just snapping.
Yeah.
Let's now take a quick look at other world stories we're watching. Polls have closed on the first day in the Egyptian presidential election. This comes as the country grapples with an economic crisis and a war on its border with Gaza. Dilapidated boats carrying an estimated 400 ethnic Rohingya arrived in Indonesia. The latest arrival comes amid a social media backlash and pushback from locals. And the children of Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi collected their mother's award. The women's rights activist has been jailed for allegedly spreading propaganda. And those are the top world headlines of the hour. Join us again at 9:45 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News, all sides, all the time.